Hello and welcome to Simply Ravy. I'm your host, Ed Ravy. This is the channel that asks the question, what is your moral philosophy and how did you derive it? We also kind of take a look at my moral philosophy as an example, and hopefully through my example and a little bit of education and teaching to you, we can all become better human beings. Today I'm kind of doing my first installment of Friday Fireside, which is on Fridays I'm going to try to basically just respond to comments and maybe talk about a few random things that may interest me. If that's not your kind of content, you're most welcome to chill out at this point and peace out if that's what you want to do. But a lot of sometimes the comments get interesting, and based on my previous experience with another channel, I will probably just stay right out front. I will pick the most interesting comments. Now right now all of them are interesting because I don't have very many, and then I will deal with those. So if you comment, it may end up on a Friday Fireside from time to time. The other thing that I need to talk really briefly about is my rules for comments. I really haven't changed them. My main rule is don't be a dick. Don't treat people badly. We're here for conversations. You can use my comments as a place to have those conversations, but if those conversations start to get personal and you start making personal attacks and calling people whatever, I used to get that all the time on my atheist channel because people would come on there, you atheists are this and you atheists are that, and it's like, that's a personal attack. You're not really addressing the issue. That would be a good way to get a warning. The second time I warn them, I'll tell them flat out, you do this again, I'm going to block you. And I think I blocked about 4 or 5 people. Every single one of them was a Christian, basically a religious person. And that kind of, there was just a lot of personal attacks, and I probably would have gotten accused, oh, you're just blocking Christians. No, there were still about 6 or 7 Christians that were allowed to comment. And 2 of them even PM'd me and said they agreed with that rule. To me, comments are a place to discuss. You can have good, respectful arguments, and that's the thing I'm going for today. I do not like the tone in the world where people are just very disrespectful in the way they argue. You can have a vehement disagreement with people and still be civil, okay? You can even think somebody has a very amoral view or immoral view, but you still have to be civil. And I really work on that for myself, so we're going to head down that road, and I'm going to keep that. It seemed to work well before, and so I'm going to continue to keep those rules before me unless a change becomes necessary. All right, on to your comments, and I want to thank everybody that did comment. So I'm going to start off with the one at the bottom from Diana Graham. Diana Graham and I go way back, but I'm not going to say how far because from my perspective, Diana is a young, beautiful woman, and she will remain so in my mind, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. She writes, my sister was a substitute teacher in the public school system. Now this is relating to the video where I said why I left the public school teaching system. She had some long-term assignments that she loved. Luckily, she found a mentor that helped her over the bumps. The school system failed you by not having a mentor to help guide you. With the school systems playing catch-up with the kids after school, it really messed up a lot of teachers. You're not alone in leaving the teaching field. However, looking back at our time in college, you enjoyed being able to teach and debate. Hopefully you'll be able to find your niche soon. My mentor was kind of a joke. When I got there, the mentorship program had won a lot of awards, but when I got there, the person that was in charge of that mentorship program had retired, like literally 2 weeks before I got there. They never informed us of that. So it was a month before I even got a mentor. I think I met with my mentor 3 times. It was just kind of one of those things where it was kind of bad. So yeah, I didn't really get a good mentor. We didn't have a specialist the first year. And I think if those things had been different, maybe I would have had a lot less stress about things. but I had to do a lot of things myself. And on the one hand, I love the freedom of that. On the other hand, I just didn't like people joggling my elbow with how I taught. I think if you're going to have people that are alternatively certified in school systems, you need to respect the fact that they're going to come at it from a different angle than somebody with the education degree. And I think one of the things I did experience, and I think this is pretty universal, not just in Texas but other places, but I think people who get the education degree don't have a lot of respect for the education of other people that come from other fields when they go into teaching. And I think, my problem with it, don't get me wrong, I get that education degrees have a lot of, this is how you can better educate, this is, and all that. But I also look at the public school system and say, yeah, but almost everything I see in education is about control. If I can control the kids, if I can, make them, knee-jerk react to stuff, and that's conditioning, okay? And I don't think we should have our kids conditioned. I want kids to think for themselves, and they're not always going to think like I would, and they're not going to always things right. And so there was a lot of philosophical things about how to approach education. As for finding my niche, I think this channel might be it. And writing, because right now I'm writing a lot on the Gray Wayfarer, which is my blog. You can just type in the Gray Wayfarer Ed Raby and you'll find it probably. I'm getting back into fantasy and creative writing, using Dungeons and Dragons, things like that, to kind of get my creative juices flowing again. There will come a point where, okay, that's going really well. Let's sit down and start writing that novel. And maybe being an author and maybe being an influencer on YouTube is my niche. See, there's a lot of things about the ministry I used to like. I liked preparing a message every week. I liked talking to people about what they believed and why they believed it. It's like I said in my one, losing the game of life video, philosophically, becoming the philosopher in the woods kind of thing is a real goal of mine. I don't want the stuff. In fact, I'm living in this apartment and I'm thinking to myself, if I chopped off like a third of the size of this apartment and designed the floor plan in a much more ergonomically, efficient way, and put myself on maybe a half acre of woods, I'd be fine. Okay, and a woman who would join me in that, because I'm still looking for love, would have to accept that that's the lifestyle. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I just don't like being wasteful, and I don't like being other things. So my niche involves a lot of things. Me and my therapist talk about this a lot. In fact, this is kind of my homework for the next 2 weeks on this journey of life. What are the 3 things I'm trying to discover? One of them came to me very, very quickly, which is I want to know that I can be loved and fall in love again. And that's very important to me, because if there's one thing I miss about not being a couple, it's that feeling when you come in and you hug your significant other. And that feeling, I miss that a lot. The sex and all the rest of it that goes along with being a couple, I miss that too, but it's the cuddling, that I miss. It's trusting somebody enough and loving them enough and having them love me in return. This is one thing I want to discover on my journey. The other 2 I haven't really, it's kind of my homework, and I'm still thinking about what am I trying, but I think finding my niche might be one of them. What is my role in society? What am I trying to find out here? And then I want to discover some things about myself. I think with the autism thing, I'm heading a different direction with that. So, so that's kind of where I'm going. The next comment comes from David Avery. Do you know if you were born premature? I've heard there are correlations between being premature birth and high-functioning autism and depression. I've heard that combination has produced many genius and even charismatic leaders and artists. I got this from the Jolly Heretic, Edward Dutton. on YouTube. I know he's an atheist like you, and he's really interested in scientific observation that don't go through a left wing filter. Yeah, I've heard of him too. But as for my own birth, according to my mother, I wasn't premature. But my mother had had at least one miscarriage, and according to my father, he believes that she may have had more than just one. It's just one was really significant because the baby was a little bit farther along, and she could tell, certain things about it, including the sex, I believe. I think it was a girl. And so I had a sister that died before she even had a chance. So, it's what really was probably going on with my mother. She was a career woman. She was hopped up on a lot of coffee to keep going. She was a big-time coffee drinker, still is, but she's really dialed it back. And I really love my mom. She's a great lady. And we had a discussion about this, and she feels more inclined to think if I am autistic, then it's probably more the product of my mother being being a little bit nervous about the pregnancy, and that was understandable given what she had gone through before that. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Yes, there is a great correlation between depression and creative genius, and autism and creative genius, and the combo of the two can kind of supercharge that. Some autistic people are very creative and very wonderful people. Edgar Allan Poe, for instance, suffered from manic depression, probably, based on the description of his life. He'd have these moments where he'd just slip into a deep depression. Other times he was just writing like nobody's business, and you go back and forth between those two things, and he had a great genius. Another great introvert genius that I think maybe not was autistic but did suffer from depression was probably Freddie Mercury, the now dearly departed lead singer from Queen. He was very introverted privately. On stage, he's considered one of the best showman band leaders of all time, and yet off camera, away from the band, away from the stage, he was a very private person and liked to get alone and be away from everything. And so I think there is that connection between those people that may not be neurologically wired like everybody else, and those that are doing things a little bit differently. So, yeah, I think you make a valid point for me and for other people. This next comment comes from Ramblings and Beyond. He has his own little channel. I encourage you guys to check him out. He says, interesting talk. I must admit, growing up in my 20s, I had ideas of wanting to be an entertainer, and I have a semblance of artistic and writing ability, even though as do far as self-publish, a short tour to complete a few art projects. But despite that, I never pursued making those works known beyond a small circle of people. I just went on to the next project. It wasn't until I turned 31, currently so, that I realized I was truly interested in it as a career path. I do like giving people a good time on occasion, but I realize now it's not a career path that I want. A large part of why I thought I did find was because the American culture said society's ideals making me think that my ideals. But later I realized, like my friends, a very small circle is what I prefer. Me too. Ramblings and Beyond. I get burned out having company over for over 2 hours. Same. I like my passions being on my own time and not a deadline set to impress. Also same. It kills the passion. I can't manage large social circles. I love space and privacy. Same. I have no desire for social media. Same. Just a word about social media. I probably peruse Facebook for about 15 minutes a day. I respond to things, post a few memes, and if somebody were to ask me why I do that, it's just to let everybody know I'm still alive and maybe be a little entertaining. So I don't really do a lot there. The most I engage is YT. More YouTube, more watching than anything else. Yeah, me too. I watch a lot of YouTube. I have a favorite channel, Hadrian. Hadrian plays games and talks, and he's funny to me. He's my kind of person, I guess, when he plays games, and he plays the games I play, like Stellaris and The Long Dark, and he plays Civilization and a few others, and I really enjoy some of those games. I love Stellaris and I love The Long Dark, and it's kind of my thing. So one of the things that I kind of go forward with is this idea of I like seclusion and I like being by myself, but I also like getting out on that stage. One of the things I miss about the ministry is preaching. And this YouTube channel, every time I've had a YouTube channel, I feel like that itch, that itch to preach, it's like, or talk or whatever is scratched. And sharing what I'm learning, that's the main motivation for this channel. I'm not coming here as your guru. I'm not coming here as somebody who knows everything. I'm coming as a person who is trying to walk their moral philosophy as best they can, discovering more things about it, because I don't think it's a static thing. I think it's something you're constantly growing and developing. In the short, I'm still trying to figure myself out and as far as life, but I do have an established moral philosophy that I had years ago. Okay, so let's take a look. And he kind of shares it, points, and I'm not picking on him at all. I'm just reading what he has to say about his moral philosophy and just saying, hey, yeah, or maybe you want to think about this. If someone sees something wrong and they have the ability to make it right, then they have an obligation to do so. This philosophy taken from Nicolas Cage movie National Treasure. Yeah, I remember that scene. And I think the big key to that one is if you have the ability to make it right. As somebody who's starting to follow a more Stoic philosophy, part of Stoic philosophy is asking yourself the question, can I do anything about this or not? Because if you can't, if it's something you can't change, then it's not that you necessarily just put it out of your mind, but you put it in that section that says, when I can do something about this, I'll pick this back up. But if I can't do anything about it, there's just no point. A stance against hypocrisy. In summary, if I find something that I strongly disagree with, but I end up doing the very thing I don't like, do so against another, or I find myself doing the same thing as another, to which I find issue, then I have no right to preach or complain about it until I correct the behavior or make amends and not do it again. There's also a third possibility. If you preach against something but find yourself doing it, and then you examine it by doing it and realize there's really nothing wrong with it, maybe you realize that maybe you shouldn't have a stance against that. That sometimes you discover, what I thought was really morally objectionable about this really isn't a morally objectable now that I look at it. It's just a human thing. I think the one thing as an atheist I have really kind of began to discover is how many times religion calls something a sin. And when I look at it now, it's like, but that's just being human. It's amazing how many religions, particularly the Abrahamic ones, have so many things against sexuality. And it's weird because a lot of the things they just have things against, probably 90% of it is just being human. Like, Jesus' whole admonition not to lust after a woman, it's like, that's sexual attraction. If we didn't have sexual attraction, there wouldn't be babies. It's like, and you're trying to make that a sin, and then nobody can escape that, so everybody's a sinner, so everybody needs your made-up cure. And I think that's something that needs to be considered. When you look at a morality, make sure that it really is morally objectionable. Part of having a good moral philosophy is when you look at a certain issue or event and you look at all sides, well, which one is the most moral? And if you're really looking at that rationally and putting your own feelings behind it, what you're going to discover is that sometimes it's just not as immoral as you think it is, or as bad as you think it is. And that's just kind of the way it goes. Just a few self-improvement. Yeah, that one's on my list. In fact, the whole issue of moral philosophy is self-improvement, improving the way you live as a human being. Honesty. Although I do think human beings are conditioned by society to lie as a defense mechanism. I don't think that's necessarily a personality trait, but we lie all the time to preserve people's feelings, and I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. People lying to preserve people's life, I don't think it's a bad thing either. So honesty, I think though, being honest is kind of difficult for me. One of the things I struggle with is being very honest about my feelings because I'm very defensive about that. And that's because of a lot of personal experiences where I did share my feelings with people, girlfriends, other people, some friends that are no longer friends, and they kind of use those things to backstab me. So I need to be more honest about my feelings, but I also need to know the proper boundaries and parameters for doing so, for me. Okay. 5, no hasty assumptions. I don't know everything. This is generally speaking. Yeah, I think the one thing I've learned about first impressions is they're wrong most of the time. Once you get to know somebody, it's not quite what you think they were. I have a first impression about a guy that I've been working with. We're remodeling our store, and I'm on the remodel team. And the guy I was initially working with, he was just kind of, I got into a job, and I'm like, I can't do this job, okay? And I told him so, and I didn't really want to do some of the things they were asking me to do because I'm a little bit worried about my health. And at first I thought he was like pissed off about it, but he doesn't express his emotions very well other than to yell from time to time. And I thought, man, this guy's kind of a jerk. And the more I got to know him, though, he's not really a jerk. He's just under a lot of pressure. And I think that brings out the worst in people. 6, make an effort to understand even the positions of others I don't agree with. Everyone's journey is different, and I must remember that the respective journey made them who they are and informed what they believe. Yes. This is kind of why I do take some active stances against certain groups of people because they don't seem to put in the effort to understand. This is a very good rule because it puts you back into a position of humility. I think this is a very good part of your moral philosophy because I think when I look at, I have a political science degree, so when I look at politics, it's like they're pulling on everybody's heart trying to get each other against each other. That way you vote one side or another. Nobody, in the United States, I don't think the Republicans or the Democrats have the best interests of the country at heart. They're just trying to get power, and they want you to vote them into power. And the democracy kind of does that. And, like when the liberals say the Republicans threaten democracy, guess what? Republicans say Democrats threaten democracy. So that's an empty accusation. And really, if you want to know if democracy is going on alive and well, just watch Congress and see if every time there's an election that the transfer of power is easy. If it's not, it means they're jockeying for position. Democracy will end usually when people don't feel safe under it to a point that they want a dictator or an oligarchy. And, you got to watch that sort of thing. But, strong political stances, I'm not a big fan of the woke crowd because they shame people. I have the same problems with them that I have with the religious right, okay, and the Christian nationalists, for instance. You don't listen to anybody, you don't try to understand the other side, you just try to shame them, put them out of business, boycott them, whatever. Some boycotts, I guess I understand because it's like, I don't understand things, but boycotts, in my opinion, have never really worked. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't get what you want, but often it's a temporary solution. It's not something permanent that a boycott does. And society is always changing, and people are always changing. I think that's the thing that really bothers me about some ideologies, some of the ones I mentioned, is they don't allow for people to change, really, and change their viewpoint. I am a completely different person than I was 18 years ago, or 20 years ago, or when I was 18. What I think, believe, and feel is completely different. And people are constantly evolving. And if you still hold the same views that you had 20 years ago, you haven't evolved as a human being, okay? And were you right back then and now you're wrong is a very valid question. Okay, and going back to something like I'm going back to minimalism. I used to follow a very minimalistic lifestyle. I got away from it a little bit for a few years, and I'm going back to it because I think there's something to be said about constantly asking the question, do I need this? Or do I just want it? And you have to kind of do that. Seven, just because I don't like someone doesn't mean there isn't anything I can learn from them. That is very true. In fact, I would say people that we disagree with the most are the ones we learn the most from. Maybe not what they're teaching, but in engaging their stuff, we discover, hey, some things about us. And just because I don't like someone doesn't mean they aren't of value to anyone else. Very true. I think I would add one thing. Just because I don't like a certain behavior, it doesn't mean that I should work to make it illegal. It's like I don't personally smoke a joint, but I don't think anybody should go to jail for it. Okay? I don't think anybody should go to jail for dealing in marijuana. And in Michigan, everything recreational use is legal. The federal government is having a fit because so many states are legalizing marijuana. And I agree with Bill Meyer right now. It's a missed opportunity for the Biden administration just straight up to flip and end the drug war. The drug war needs to end. And we need to approach our drug abuse problems as a medical issue, not as a criminal one. And that would empty out a bunch of our prisons, get rid of them, get rid of that shit. And then we can focus on crimes that actually hurt people. I'm not pro, gangsta. I'm pro freedom when it comes to people making their own personal choices. So, yeah, just because I don't like somebody and what they do doesn't mean I should make it illegal or make them illegal or shame them or, they're on their own journey. And when you understand that everybody's on their journey, I think you can get a little bit more tolerant. And so, just, keep on plugging away. All right, I want to thank everybody for commenting. This has been kind of the Friday Fireside chat kind of thing. And for this week, for April 7th, 2023. It's for the Christians, it's Good Friday. For me, I don't care. It's another Friday to relax and kick back, so I do appreciate that. You coming and stopping by. Just make sure you like and share and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate that. Right now, it's kind of fledgling, and the more I get, the more I do. Kind of my plans for the channel are continue to produce videos. I have a weekend coming up where I don't have to go to work, so I may do maybe an extra video or two. I'm just trying to get my content up. I know that kind of the more content there is, the more there is for people to discover. And making a commitment to putting out a video every day has been a little bit of a stretch. It takes me about an hour every day. Actually, probably a little bit more than that, but a lot of times when I'm waiting for the video to upload to YouTube and render is my time that I read. So it ends up being, a time where I can get some stuff done and appreciate that. But I appreciate everybody stopping by. I appreciate every comment. Keep commenting. I'll pick the best ones to talk about in Friday Fireside. This week it was all of them because, this is still a young channel. But this will probably be a regular feature where somewhere on Friday I'll drop a video where I deal with comments and talk about things. And, once again, thanks for stopping by, and keep working on your moral philosophy and keep developing it. And hopefully I'll see you again soon, and have a great weekend.